Welcome back, everyone, to The Sensitivity Doctor. Today, I had the fabulous Dr. Amna Shabbir on the podcast. We know each other from TEDx Raleigh, and she is a dual board certified physician. But not just that, she is so steeped in research and excitement about perfectionism. So we unpack how anyone who is high achieving or puts a lot of pressure on themselves or tries to do it all can finally, once and for all, meet themselves with a level of compassion and humanity to be able to show up to your life in a way that feels so much more true to you. I love this conversation because she and I, honestly, share a lot of our own different tendencies and how perfectionism can look different, why it exists, and what we can finally do about it to honestly kick back at a world that puts way too much pressure and creates a societal perfectionism that we're just honestly done with. So I hope you enjoy the episode. Amna, I'm super stoked you're here today. I'm excited that you are on my podcast. And we met through TEDx Raleigh, which was a wild experience. How have you been doing since then?
I've been recovering and soaking it all in. I've been doing
That's a good
well.
way to put it.
I think it meant so much to me. I've talked about things that I've really never talked about before. And since then, something interesting has happened because the message resonated with so many humans. I've gathered the courage to share more about that part and more about my story. And so I think it's been rewarding in that sense. But yeah, this process of giving a TEDx talk unlike any other talk I've ever given, and a very humbling process, I would say.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like as a perfectionist, which is, or maybe a recovering perfectionist, I'll have to ask you exactly how you qualify yourself and the work that you do. I would imagine this would be huge. Like I have to say personally, I talk a lot about ADHD and neurodiversity just because of my own experiences. And for me, the memorization part was so stressful because it was so opposite of how my brain works. It like brought up all the like I felt like moments where I felt like I was like a 9-year-old trying to remember my social studies exam like information. Like it brings up a lot of your insecurities when you're doing it.
I have to so agree. To your earlier question, I don't call myself a recovering perfectionist yet because
Okay.
I struggle to embody that persona, what that is, in terms of as if there is like this proverbial invisible line and I've crossed it and now I'm on the other side. Maybe there is. It's a process. I'm always very honest about that. But yes, has the grip of perfectionism loosened itself very much in my life and on myself? Yes. But when you put yourself in a high stress situation, high stakes situation like TEDx, everything comes up. And with that, all these other components that are tied to perfectionism, such as for me, self criticism as well as imposterism, comes up roaring. So is this you? Like, should you be the one sharing this message? Although I have been studying and interviewing individuals surrounding perfectionism, have a personal story tied to it, but every time I would talk, all of that would come up, and then the critic would come up. There you go. You messed up again. How can you not memorize this? How did you get through medical school? How did you get through residency? How can you not? So it's all of that. It was all this. It got really noisy in my head. And I also started actually feeling physical manifestations of it was really odd. I don't know how else to qualify them other than physical manifestations of stress slash unworthiness during this process. And that was a really odd experience between you and me. So all like boss scars started coming up. Like for example, my C-section starts scar started to hurt. It is such an odd thing to say out loud.
Wow.
I was so aware of my jaw clenching and my root canal is hurting, and it's like all this physical stuff came up for me.
Yeah.
And the first couple of times when I was rehearsing the talk, it was really hard for me to get through the entire talk without crying. when I was doing it myself because it was so deeply personal. But
Yeah.
then when I would do it in front of somebody else, I would instantly like turn on that perfectionist in me. Like, no, no, I can't be falling apart in front of other people.
Right.
So that was all very interesting.
In your C-section scar from unworthiness, from the feeling of unworthiness.
Yeah. I I think it was I just became so aware how important this message was. And I felt like there was so much writing on the message that I
Yeah.
need to share it. And I need to share this message on perfectionism perfectly. Like, and then I added that line in my own talk. And when I
Yeah.
said that sentence, there's a sentence where I talk about that. I really meant every word of that talk came straight from my heart, from deliberation, multiple times from working with my coach. And so the week before, the days before, it was yeah, I was so aware. I had had a foot fracture. The healing
Oh,
site
I
was
didn't know that.
hurting. Yeah, it was a couple of years ago. So at
Oh,
that
oh,
time,
okay.
so everything that had happened physically to me in the last couple of years, it was just acting up. And I'm a physician, and it really was not making a lot of sense to me. So I said, okay, I guess we're just doing it with all of this happening. We're just gonna get on the stage and talk.
So it's so wild because I actually am like loving this conversation because it's giving me an opportunity to also talk about my experience with it. I talked about the memorization piece, and I wonder if this is part of what drives the kind of the disadvantage of perfectionism, because there's also advantages to it in some ways, which I'm sure we'll touch on. But do you remember we had all gotten together, us talkers, for like a little meet and greet type of session? And I was saying that, of course, it was like Greg or someone who said, I'm not nervous, who I get to talk to him later today. So I'll tell him you said hi. But I remember the weight I was putting on my talk, where I was like, if this talk is going to do all these things, and if I don't say it the way that it's meant to say, it's not going to be received. Can I tell you, I forgot an entire paragraph of my talk. An
I remember
entire
you
paragraph. Did I tell you this
I
after?
remember you getting off the stage and sharing that with me, and I was like, "What are you talking about? That talk was fabulous, and it was so impactful, and
It
I could
was,
not tell that."
oh my gosh, it was wild because, and I feel like maybe it happened as it was supposed to, but I'm halfway through. And all of a sudden, I felt like the scene from what Inside Out is Inside Out, the
Yeah,
one where they have
yeah.
all the like feelings inside, where I had my front part of my brain doing the talk and looking at people, and the back part of my brain felt like a whole like boardroom meeting. Was like, okay, where do we take this? Where do we put it back in? When do we do it? What part do we put back in? And even when I put part of it back in, it was like out of body watching everyone's faces like, did I say this already? Like it was like a whole thing. But what leads me back to this perfectionism piece, I got off the stage. All of you were just like, that was amazing. Good job. The crowd was so receptive. And all I could do was fixate on the paragraph I missed.
Yes.
So let's unpack in your mind, what is the thing about perfectionism that draws people in? And like, what does this look like? And what was I doing with that paragraph?
I love that question and how you framed it. And your talk was, I will highlight, it was so well delivered, and it meant so much to all the audience members. And we did not see that moment. So stepping back a little bit, when I talk about perfectionism, I like to talk about it in full context. And so
Okay.
when I say full context, I am talking about modern perfectionism. And modern perfectionism is very much, it is nature and nurture both, as well as all of this happening as a product of our environment as well as who we are. Because if we don't acknowledge the environment piece of it, then we just gaslight people into, you go and you release your attachment. Why did you have that attachment to begin with? So, this is really important to recognize the environmental role in whatever we're going to be talking about. Most of perfectionism, like everything, starts as a safety strategy because we are wired to survive. We're wired to survive, and this started as a safety strategy. When I appear perfect, I will be loved by my parents, When I get that perfect score, I will get the praise. I will belong. I literally will thrive that way. So perfectionism usually starts as that strategy, and then we absorb it. And life goes on into adulthood, and then we're striving and we're striving. And we live in this society, we glorify perfection. As worked with people and I've talked about this and I've learned and I've studied this from what I call the lived experience, I really find it hard to find the good side of perfectionism. And that's a really hard message to spread because I feel that what we think is the good side of perfectionism is actually what we talk about or we consider excellencism. Like it is great to have those high standards. I am a physician. I save lives. If I do anything wrong, literally people can lose their lives. But also, if
Yeah.
I continue to put that pressure on myself, what kind of performance am I going to actually give? Because in that moment, when I think of this whole situation, I remove my humanity from it. And so what has happened is, as a society at large, we have gravitated towards this ideal of everything needs to be perfect. And it never will be because we're all human beings. And that's why we are constantly striving and we're restless and we're struggling. And we can go and we can do everything. Like we don't want to age. All the anti-aging products they're like hitting the market A1. We don't want to do anything. We just want to stay static and perfect. And that's what it is. And so a lot of this agony is coming from there. And so then there's other parts of when you look at perfectionism as a whole, right? You cannot look at perfectionism without recognizing your unique identity. Your identity, for example, I'll share. I am a woman, right? I'm a high achieving woman who is now has children. And what do I want from my children? Do I want them to just be mediocre children? Or am I subconsciously already putting that pressure on them? And I'm a high achieving woman who was birthed by a high achieving woman. So where did this start? Where does this end? Okay, now in addition to that, I'm also a South Asian woman. I belong from a very context heavy culture. If I mess up, it might be reflective of my entire family messing up.
Oh,
So
I gotcha. Like
I have to,
collectivists.
very collectivist and very, what might jive okay in certain cultures might not be okay. And so, as a South Asian woman, it's what I faced within my culture, but it's also as a South Asian woman, I'm considered a model minority. Then when I go out in the
A
workplace, they're
what?
a model minority.
Okay, for people outside your culture.
Yes. So
Okay,
what?
sorry. For a second, I thought you meant within your culture. I was like,
No,
"Ooh, this is something I've never heard of." Okay, I gotcha. I'm following you.
so outside the culture. And so
Gotcha.
when I go outside and I am in leadership positions or I am taking care of my clients or my patients, wherever I find myself, there's a very separate layer of perfectionism. And so for me, the way it showed up, I really needed to blend in. For the longest time, I really I just wanted to just merge in and melt into the wall, but also melt in the wall that my professional accomplishments will shine through, but not really my identity, which then creates its own kind of chaos. Oh, by the way, so I'm a woman, I'm South Asian, I'm a mother, I'm a mother. Now, I have to be the perfect mother. I have to make sure my children are currently in a screen free, toxin free, all the free environment. I never give anybody parenting advice. There are parenting experts. I'm not one of them. All I say is that most parents are trying to do the best that they can. And so, where does perfectionism start layering in? So, there's so many layers of this. And then we come now, what we're seeing is, as at large, we perpetually feel inadequate. That's the feeling I would feel most of these days before I started doing this work. Before I went to sleep, I recognized all the ways I had failed that day, all the things I didn't do, all the times if I'm recording a podcast, I wanted to say something, but it took a long time for me to land the plane, and I'm replaying that in my head. And in the morning when I wake up, I already feel behind because I'll wake up. Now, as an entrepreneur, you turn on social media, it seems like most of the world has already passed you by. So it became very clear to me that when we talk about perfectionism, it is critical to look at it not just as an individual trait or a person's problem, but it is a problem that is being bred at large as a societal issue.
Okay. Whoa. So many things that you said I wanted to comment on. Um, first of all, you were saying the thing about perfectionism being driven by, well, actually, I'll frame this as a question. In your opinion, what do you think for you personally has been the main driver for your own perfectionism?
I'm going to take a deep breath and give a short answer.
Okay.
I think it has been nature and nurture both. I The earliest expectations from me were to be the perfect daughter and to look perfect. I mentioned a little bit about my South Asian identity, which I honestly, for the longest time, never ever brought up consciously in these conversations, which was hilarious to me. When I started writing my book and interviewing people, I was like, huh, but I feel like there's something missing. So for me, that was a big part of it. The big part why I concealed my mental health struggles under the guise of perfectionism. I can't ask for help during when I struggled with postpartum depression. So for me personally, it was like handed to me as the only option to exist. And then, because it was handed to me so early, and it wasn't handed with ill intentions, this was what was taught everywhere. That's how you survived. You became the doctor. You look perfect. And I was laughing the other day. I was going through my book proposal with my coach, and I had put something about putting whitening products on my skin, and I've never talked about this in a podcast. And I was laughing. I'm like, I come from an educated, empowered family, but it was still a thing. And so, from the expectation to look physically perfect, to behave perfect, to get the most amount of academic achievements, to be perfect, and then anything less than perfect was not tolerated. So, any form of failure was not allowed, it was not acceptable. A's had always had to be straight A stars. Everything had to be ace. It had to be perfect. And then you live life like that, it can be extremely depleting.
So I want to throw out a completely contrasting origin for perfectionism, in my opinion,
Yeah, I'd
that
love to
you,
hear that.
that you didn't touch on that I really want to hear your thoughts on. And it might actually pull in highly sensitive people specifically and empaths specifically, which we've talked about on this podcast a lot. I truly believe what Bloom Post said in my episode with her that empaths, highly sensitive people are born because it's a state trait. Empaths are created through lived experience. And so, and if any of you are like some, kind of medium or animal empath, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about like, just like deep empaths in general. There's this other side of perfectionism where, and I'm saying this kind of more in my own personal experience. In one way, I try to live a very anti-perfect life. Like I don't really read instructions a lot. I just try to kind of dive into things, not overthink things, because if I overthink it, then it provides kind of like a platform for perfectionism. But there's this other side where the perfectionism starts to be created not because of negative outcomes, not because of getting in trouble or because something isn't tolerated, but because of when you seem to please people or when you seem to make people happiest or when you get the most positive attention, especially when you're craving it. And so I have these two very distinct moments in my life that I don't think I've talked about on this podcast that you're being vulnerable, I'll be more vulnerable too. That really, I think, shaped some of I wouldn't call it perfectionism, but it's almost like this like really high inner expectation. One of them was I was a dancer my whole life. Like I danced in a very competitive dance school, especially for tap. We were like in Star Search so if anyone knows what Star Search was, it was like America's Got Talent, but without the judges, or maybe there were judges. I don't remember. I was too young to go at the time, but I know my studio went. I remember like coming back from summer camp one year And I was in that awkward, like, kind of chubby kid phase where I don't know. I was at camp. I had lost a bunch of weight. I'm like prepubescent, just like who knows what's going on with your body at that point in your life. And the dance teacher, who I would not say was, very emotionally intelligent when I look back, took one look at me and goes, "Oh, you look great. You look like you've lost a lot of weight. I think you're ready to join the competitive company." And that moment is so emblazoned in my mind. Like it was that in combination with all these other messages that kids get around their bodies, especially in like the 80s and 90s, about especially girls, that it wasn't negative attention. It was positive attention. And then it was like, you better hold that. You better keep that, or you're going to be taken out. Like you will lose the right to have this seat. I felt this kind of nuanced pressure where I remember bringing my grades home and I didn't have all A's. And I have come to understand when I'm interested in something, my potential. I now know that as an adult. But as a child, I felt like I was missing the mark, not because of pressure, but because no one was noticing that I wasn't getting the A's I could have. And I asked my dad, like, why doesn't it bother you guys when I, only have B's and A's and stuff? And he looked at me and he goes, well, we don't have to worry about you. Your grades are fine. And that was meant to be a loving, supportive comment, but it rocked me. I think it created this notion in my mind that I had to like keep it together so that if other people are stressed out, I got it together and you don't have to worry about me. Now, obviously, I went into like being a therapist and I'm all about expression and vulnerability, but this was like, my 12-year-old version of me or however old I was. And so I think sometimes I really believe a lot of these messages start in our formative years. And I would love to hear your thoughts on the origins where you think perfectionism really begins, where you think it gets reinforced. But these ideas that we form around what we think people need from us, like about us, approve of us. So I never got critical tone from people. I really didn't get the negative messaging. I only got positive messaging because I really am grateful for that. And I think it allowed me to think really, big and grand. And I'm okay with failing. That's why I always get confused. I'm okay with failing too. But there's this like inner, if I have it together, everyone else can just kind of have their issues and I can have it together so they don't have to worry.
So much is coming to my mind right now. And
Okay.
this is not a contrarian belief, actually, Amelia.
Okay.
I have experienced that, what I would say the ratio of like positive to negative, like what's happening here. So a couple of thoughts come to my mind. One is that when I share my personal story, and thank you for sharing those moments. Those are the moments that they stick in our head, right? They're in our
I
minds.
can like see where I was. I can see the look on the faces of the people talking to me. Yeah.
Yes,
And I
yes.
have, disclosure, I have talked to my dad about this since then. So I have not called my dance teacher. I don't know where he is in the world, but
So if I just look at those two examples that you shared, so when your dance teacher said this, I what came up for me was I struggled with eating disorders and weight issues all my life. And thankfully right now I find myself at a space, and I don't even talk about it that publicly because I feel like when I talk about something like that, I don't know what it's going to bring up for the listener.
right.
I don't want to talk about my weight loss. I don't know what that's going to look like for the other person. I also don't trust myself, maybe to an extent. What's with the weight? It goes up, it goes down. I don't care. But I did struggle with binge eating disorder, and it was challenging. And we know that when we study perfectionism and we study dancers and
Oh my gosh,
perfectionism and
especially competitive
perfectionists,
dancers.
competitive dancers. One of my amazing guests on the show did ballet, and she's now a physician. And she really, like, she had eating disorders that ended her eating career, her dancing career.
I hope
And
it
so
didn't end her eating career.
it did not. So, but yes, so that's what it brought up for me.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, what I will say is that we lean more into, as at society at large, in a performance-based identity over a values-based identity. And when we lean into the performance-based identity, that's what's going to get all that positive feedback. So in recent memory, the most worst moments of my life was when I was doing it all and I was being appreciated for doing it all. And the biggest shift that I have made in my life, while not calling myself a recovering perfectionist, is that I am just telling everybody, look at me. I'm a human being, and leaning into my radical humanity over my radical performance. So I'll share this.
Oh, I
I
like that.
was I was I was working full time as a primary care physician at that time. I had just had my second daughter. I was going through postpartum depression. I was hiding it from everyone. Lexapro was prescribed and was hanging out on my nightstand. I hadn't taken the first tablet because I was so afraid of many things, afraid of failing, afraid of my licensing, my credibility as a physician, and to even get that prescribed. I initially just lied on all my depression screenings in my OB's office multiple times. And now I talk about it openly because there's a very big element of that. But on the outside, what the world saw was this person who made it to all social events, invited people to her house, has two children, has a beautiful home, and has a supportive husband. And she's doing it all. And she's working at a large academic center. She is like, this is it. This is what you talk about. This is what you work so hard towards. And everyone would say, look at Amna. Just look at Amna. She can just do it all. And she can do it with such grace. And then Amna would say, there's the dopamine hit. I needed you to validate me because I'm so sleep deprived and I'm crying all the time, but at least you think that I have it all together. And so it was just this odd way. And so for me, perfectionism, I'd say, is it's lying. It's lying and acting in so many different ways, right? So the exhaustion and the depletion became so real, and it got really dark for me at that time, and it had to get super dark before it got better. I mean, I had thoughts of hurting myself at that point, and also because if I could not do this perfectly, then I'm not going to do it at all. If I can't do life perfectly, I'm just not going to do it. And so a lot of that was driven by external validation from different people. And I could not imagine a universe in which I could live without external validation, without people pleasing, and by setting a boundary. Are you kidding me?
Could I ask you a question about that? Because when you were just saying that was such an interesting way to put it, that like someone saying, wow, you're doing it all, gave you the little dopamine hit that made it okay that you were sleep deprived. Like it kind of
Yeah.
gave you the hormonal boost you needed to get through the deprivation of rest. I wonder, and maybe this will be something we'll talk about in the collective you're creating that I'm excited to be part of. I wonder if, as a culture and as a society, we should be reframing the way that we see each other and validate each other and recognize the other, but in a way that also doesn't make someone feel critical or feel criticized. Like I'm trying to think of when I have distinct memories of people saying like, how do you do it all? How do you keep up with everything? And I always joke like ADHD. No, I'm just kidding. But like, like hyperactive brain or neurodiversity or just being really excited, special interest. But it's also like, well, maybe because I'm not giving myself enough time to rest, to your point. So how could we show like how, okay, if I had known you at that time and I saw you doing it all, and my first gut instinct, my cultural instinct as a woman to woman is to go, wow, like, how impressive that you're doing all these things. What could I have said to you that would have not made you feel criticized, but would have made you feel validated or like it was okay to tell me you were not doing okay?
I'm thinking back to that time, and what I was getting also a lot at that time was parenting advice because I had the baby still,
I'm
despite
rolling
doing
my
it
eyes
all.
for anyone not watching.
So, what would have been really helpful would have been, Amna, it appears that you're doing so much and you're doing it so well. That's what it appears. Is there something that you need right now? Is there a way I can support you right now? And so what I've decided since then, when I meet new moms and they're going through this postpartum phase, I just look at them and I say, you're a great mother. Because truly, I still have to find somebody who's not a good mother. That we're all trying to do our best. And then I say, is there anything I can do to support you right now? And so if in that moment somebody had just said that, that's one way to say it. And the other way to say it, I talk about this moment where I was in clinic and I'm standing outside the patient room, going from exam room to exam room. Anybody who knows what primary care is, it's a lot. And we're expected to do a lot of work in a very we're thought to be unicorns. Like we should just do this amount of work, and we're supposed to be time benders, somehow magically create that time. So I was
Like
standing in
on
the
Grey's
hallway.
Anatomy, where they spend an hour with each patient.
Oh,
Like
sure.
what?
Because
And they still have room for an office romance.
exactly. So I'm standing there and I am struggling. Like that was childcare falling through. I just got a call from the daycare and and the worse I would feel, the brighter my lipstick would be. That was really funny because I wanted to make sure that I look good at least.
I wore my dark red for you today because I was like, oh, I can't show up without my red on.
It looks amazing.
Thank
I'm
you.
just like, I'm standing there in the hallway and I'm thinking how bad I feel. And before I had the time to readjust my facial expressions to this fake smile, my older colleague walked the hallway and he's amazing. His name is Michael. And he walked and he has been in practice in medicine for decades. He looked at me and he said, "You know, I remember how hard it was." And then he said, and I just looked at him and he said, "I remember how hard it was when he said something like when your kids were young,
Yeah,
when you had to take care of the littles, doctoring and parenting is hard." All he did was he modeled humanity. All he said was, "I remember how hard it was." And he walked on. He didn't have to therapize me. He didn't have
right.
to get overly vulnerable. All he did was in that moment, he validated my suffering and he moved on with his life. If we could do more of that. And so what that was an instantly helpful moment. And then I took a deep breath and it reminded me of the shared human experience that we all have, which is a component of self-compassion. And I was able to take a deep breath and go do the next thing that I needed to do and then go did the thing that I needed to do after that. So those are the two things. Share your humanity, model your humanity. And the second thing is ask people how can you support them? If they look like they have it all together, which we know is BS. It's not true. No one has it all together. Either
Right.
people are outsourcing tasks or they're doing something else. So if you're killing yourself thinking that somebody else has it all together while their phenotype looks exactly like you, they might be not telling you the whole story. So do not
Yeah.
compare your behind the scenes to someone's highlight reel.
I love that you mentioned outsourcing and asking for support because that's something that, I mean, I have personally learned the more I do, the more I need help. I
Oh,
mean,
yes.
really, really. So if there's anything that you don't feel on fire for, or that you have the potential to get help with, I don't think it's a sign of imperfection or failure. I really see it as a sign of intelligence and resourcefulness, to outsource those things. But it's not possible for everyone, and I bet that's where it gets really tricky, where someone might have pressure or an idea of what things should look like, and then they don't have the means to maybe get the help and support they need. That's where, like, if we just were more real, like you said, like just kind of more human with each other in general. And I can see, so I was mentioning earlier, I had said like the high sensitivity piece, and I kind of went off on a tangent about my own life. I think the reason I had mentioned that before, though, is that highly sensitive people, people who have incredible empathy, and even people who have experienced trauma and are like more vigilant of other people's experiences, sometimes can use perfectionism as a form of protection, not just protecting their own ego or their own safety, but as I was saying, kind of shielding others
Yeah.
from your needs. In what ways do you see that in maybe the work you do? And how could someone start to shift that on their own? And I'm saying this because we
Yeah.
talked about right now, like, how can we support each other? But how can you support yourself?
That's a great question. And you're right. For HSPs, highly sensitive people, when we talk about perfectionism, first of all, the sensitivity component of it, it amplifies the world, right? So everything, like including the criticism, feels louder when you're doing that. Conflicts feel sharper. So the perfectionism really does become like body armor. And if I can get it right, maybe I can avoid pain, and maybe I can shield others from this pain. So where how do we create that emotional safety? So for me, in although we talk about social change, everything starts by one person having awareness and showing up honestly. So, the biggest gift that we can give ourselves is first recognize our humanity. Like, we are human beings. I went to coaching when I was deep in my burnout with another physician coach, and I asked them, can you fix my need for sleep? And then he's like looking at me like, what are you saying? Because everyone
Sorry, I'm
around him,
laughing because I'm like, if only. Isn't
if
it
only
the what who was the artist that the Da Vinci method, or there was an artist that did these weird sleep shifts?
I am not remembering the name, but I know what you're talking about.
You keep talking,
Yeah.
I'm looking it up.
So basically, like I was completely in denial of my inherent humanity, and I was very critical with myself that why do I need sleep? Why do I need
Right.
rest? If only I could stay awake like all these other doctors during the night shifts, everything would be okay. When I started really leaning and accepting my humanity, my limitations, I get 24 hours in a day, same as everybody else. Technically, 10 hours of that time needs to be rest, according to burnout research that we have. So 42% of the time needs to be rest and recovery. How am I different? What is so special about me that is so different? So, first
Right.
step is recognizing our humanity. That is a step you can take today. And I'll share now funny ways that I do that with my family as well. Oh, look, mommy cannot do everything. Mommy is a human being. She also needs to rest. And
Yeah.
it's funny when I'll say it out loud, but my children have started being more receptive and actually started picking up after
Oh,
themselves, doing their
God.
chores. And I just keep
Good
repeating it.
point. If you're
Yeah.
human, you don't have to do it all because people actually pick up on the fact that you can't do it all.
Exactly. And
Right.
that is a commitment to humanity with yourself, because if you
Mm-hmm.
don't think you're human, you're going to expect these extraordinary things from yourself that only happen if you can again bend time. Maybe you have 48 hours in a day. Another thought that I had used to have consistently was only I can do this the best that it needs to be done perfectly.
Oh,
So even in
touche.
moments, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
even in the moments that I could outsource, granted, there is a certain level of privilege that comes with outsourcing and asking for
Absolutely.
help. But I will also challenge people who might think that they don't have the means. Where are you investing right now? Where is your time and capital going? So I had to get clear. So the first chance that I could get, I started outsourcing things because I said, wow, like wallets can refill, time cannot. What can I outsource here? So this is a caption I heard. This is not a word created by me, but it's a wonderful phrase I read on in an Instagram post somewhere. So I'm not taking credit for that. But yeah, I really thought about it that wallets can refill, but time cannot. Like, so how can I outsource? What can I do? And so the first step again is leaning into your humanity. The second step is metacognitive awareness. Watch yourself. See, how do you think about thinking? Where are you becoming extremely critical on yourself? Like my inner critic, always roaring, loud, loud, loud. Only recently do I say that my inner critic has calmed down a bit after intentionally practicing self compassion. So just notice, what do you think about this right now? Okay, while you think that you can accomplish all of this, or if you are trying to protect other people and you think that nobody wants to hear your problems and you should appear perfect to the outside world because nobody has time for your humanity, ask yourself, would you say the same exact thing to a friend, to your
Right.
colleague that you're trying to shield? So sometimes just having those simple awareness and mindset shifts can be huge. And I like data gathering. So, yes, am I telling people to journal? I am. So, but you have to make it tangible. My idea of journaling was you had to have those beautiful, lush pens, and I'll sit in like the wonderful, my comfy, cozy position, and I've got my journal. No. When I became a mom, everything was thrown out the window. The only thing I had with me all the time was my cell phone. That was the only thing I would remember to keep with me. So I started journaling. I would just pull up my phone and I would just dictate what I was thinking right there and then into my journal app. And that really helped me look back and reflect, wow, this is how
Yeah.
I think. This is
Right.
what's circling in my mind right now and weighing me down. So those two things are super helpful.
I love both of those things so much because they actually are really well supported with psychology as well. When you look at, for example, the first one that you were saying your inner critic, it really makes me think of internal family systems parts work, where we can have parts of us that are going to be louder, more flooding, more demonstrative, taking over. We're not working well with the part. And it's usually not because the part wants to hurt us. It's not because the critical part wants to harm you, but it's usually because they're not getting attention. They're not being understood. They're not being acknowledged. And so I think sometimes there's this really strong notion that I have to figure out how to fix the problem when actually just witnessing the part of you that's struggling and giving that part the space to speak, maybe through the form of journaling, that can be more powerful than trying to find another fix for anything. And it really is similar to what we're saying before about you were just witnessed by your coworker in the hallway. So slowing down enough to witness your part. And I love that you were framing it in the way that you speak to yourself because we have to really consider there's a lot of research out there about our how our beliefs shape our reality. And we know this from a cognitive standpoint, but I read this wild study recently about, and it's funny, I think it was on Mel Robbins recently. I heard about it, then I went and read the study. They had a group of maids. Did you hear about this? The fitness study with maids? Oh, it's so wild and it really speaks to like how your mindset works. They had this group of maids or sorry, not maids, housekeepers. Definitely a better term than that. So housekeepers and they asked them, "Do you have time to exercise?" And they all said, "No, I'm doing this backbreaking work. I'm at work all the time. I barely have time for self-care." With half of the group, they taught them that what they were doing was exercise. So they showed them physiologically, like when you're lifting things, when you're wiping things, when you're moving the vacuum, here's the calories you're burning, here's the muscle groups you're working. And then the other group, they didn't. It was just the control group. They didn't share anything with them. And then they found remarkable outcomes over time where the ones who mindfully thought I am exercising at work started to see reduction in their weight, improvement in their cholesterol, improvement in their health goals and their markers. It was wild. And they changed nothing about their life other than the way they saw what they were doing. So, if instead of getting fixated on your inner critic or your perfectionistic part as something that needs to be eradicated or removed or fixed or ignored, just seeing it as a part of your whole system that has its own values, that has its own needs, it can be so much more powerful. And I think speaks to what we're saying about witnessing our
Yes.
inner humanity.
And I also just want to point out that you very beautifully just communicated why I struggle to use the word recovering perfectionist. Because it's
Oh,
almost
okay.
like I labeled it like a disease, like there's something
Good point.
wrong that I need
Mm-hmm.
to fix or recover from.
Right.
And I am very open and I love to invite dialogue and invite people and give them a hug in some way. So if there's somebody who likes this term and it makes you feel comfortable by calling yourself a recovering perfectionist,
Right.
go for it. That's totally fine. But I struggle because if I say that, then I say that there was a part of me that was diseased, that needed medication, and that needed intervention. And
Yeah.
here we are. And I don't want to do that.
So maybe you're a self-aware perfectionist.
I love it. You might have come up with an excellent term that I will be using, Amelia. This is great.
So I'll ask you, for anyone listening today who feels like we really spoke directly to them, or maybe there's just, any aspect of perfectionism that they could relate to, and or really we're just talking about compassion in general and not putting so much pressure on yourself. What does it look like, in your opinion, when someone witnesses this as something they don't have to live by, that there is another way to live and to be and to relate to yourself? What does it look like maybe on the self-aware side? We're not going to say on the recovered side. We're not going to say on the other side because it's a human tendency. This is a human condition. But what does it look like maybe even after you click this episode off and you walk into your life and think, okay, now I'm aware of this. What now?
Here's how I feel most days after doing this work and talking and really leaning into my radical humanity. I have most these beautiful moments where I am not restless in who I am. And it feels like a grounding. It feels like a coming home to yourself. It feels like an acknowledgement. This is who I am, and I am okay. And I deserve to be loved. And I get to go and achieve the most amazing, beautiful things. That my drive to excellence, my excellencism, my ambition does not need to be sacrificed just because I am me. And it doesn't mean that I need to fix my looks. It doesn't mean any of that. That there's this like restless striving, this rush, and it doesn't feel like that. It feels like you can take a deep breath and just be present in that moment. That's what I would say. And I would add to that because a lot of time when you talk about letting go of perfectionism and we talk about all of this, high achievers specifically feel that it's really a lie because you want me to let go, but then I will have to sacrifice my ambition. So I really want to lean into that.
Yeah, good point.
I want to go move my body and do healthy movement and eat my meals in a healthy way and make healthy choices because I want to, because I love me, not because I have to fix me. And that's a very different energy. And your
Agreed.
motivation goes from extrinsic to intrinsic. It is an all intrinsic motivation. I accept myself as I am, my flaws, all of that. And that is not something that I just happen to like find this clearing. This has been a lot of conscious work and it continues to be because again, we just started this episode talking about a moment where I really questioned my worthiness and I was having, I feel, physical manifestations of unworthiness. But because of this awareness, because of this work, because of cultivating self compassion and radical humanity and recognizing my limitations, I can just sit and I can have, if out of 24 hours of a day, I will notice that at least 8 to 10 hours, I feel pretty okay with who I am. And that's saying a lot because the whole world
Yeah.
out there does not want that from me. The whole world out there wants me to feel deficient and inadequate. And I'm not. And I can still choose to thrive and go get that next amazing step that I want on my ambition ladder. I don't have to sacrifice either or.
I love that so much because what I'm hearing you say is if the thing you're doing connects you with your big S self, then it is you. It is at the core of you. If it's for anyone else, if it's to achieve, approve, seek, if it, to your point, is externally motivated only, then you may be playing with, that chronic perfectionistic pressure. So, to all of you today, hopefully you have walked away aware, enlightened perfectionists. And I have loved this conversation with you. It was so nice to get to sit and talk with you for a period of time because we got to talk during TEDx, but there was just so much going on and so many people. And I'm so excited to come on your podcast as well. And you are welcome back anytime. I'm sure there are so many other things we could talk about. I just really appreciate your intersection of what you're passionate about and you take the time to research it. And then also just your humanity, your vulnerability. So thank you so much for coming on. If anyone wants to follow along with you and learn more with you and walk with you in their journey of working through perfectionism, where can they find you?
Thank you so much for this opportunity to share and for having me on as a guest. This has been an honor for me.
Oh,
For anyone who is interested in learning more about perfectionism, specifically with the work that I do, you're just go to success-curated.com and you'll find my podcast there. My podcast title is Success Reimagined with Amna Shabbir, MD. And there is a very specific number of episodes, which I call part of my Unmasking Perfectionism series, in which I have had these conversations and you can double click and get deeper. Also, as Amelia so graciously mentioned earlier, I am launching a free community. It is like application only, and I want to create this space monthly where we gather virtually and we talk about how perfectionism has impacted us, and all high achievers are welcome. All people who self-identify as high achievers and who self-identify as perfectionists or have experienced the brunt of perfectionism because they are surrounded by other people in their life that struggle with perfectionism are welcome.
that's important.
All, yes, and all age groups are actually welcome. So high school students, you're welcome to come on, hop
Oh,
on. The people that
awesome.
the people that you see looking so perfect, come and hear their stories, what they're struggling with. And so for this, you can just go to unmaskingperfectionism.com and you'll be able to find the application link there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again. And if anyone feels like something was helpful for them today, please reach out, let us know. Make sure to share with other fellow perfectionists or high achievers, or just anyone that you've maybe thought, they've got a lot on their plate. Be well, everyone.